we built this road. We reduced the price of this drug. We made it so, even going back to Obamacare, selling Obamacare, we made it so that your kid with asthma can still get healthcare coverage, and they can't hold that against them. We don't talk about our accomplishments in ways. First of all, we don't talk about our accomplishments, but then when we do, we don't talk about them in ways that connect with people's real lived experience in the world. And man, I wish we were better at that.
Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast focused on incredibly talented people who've dedicated themselves to public service when their country and communities needed it the most. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bultan of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. Check out newdealleaders.org to find out more.
My guest today is State Senator Jeff Bridges, who's also the Democratic nominee for state treasurer in Colorado. The senator talks about the anger that people are feeling about rising costs and the federal government's inability to deliver that's fueling both the left and the right, and how that dynamic played out in his state's primaries earlier this summer. He's also very candid about the need for generational change in our politics, how Democrats must communicate better, and why at the end of the day, it's still the economy stupid. His advice to Democrats across the country: bring down the cost of housing and healthcare. There's a lot to this one. I hope you enjoy it. Jeff Bridges, welcome. So good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. I've been looking forward to talking to you, all things in your beautiful state of Colorado. So much happening around the country. Yeah, one of your favorite subjects, talk about Colorado.
The greatest state in the country, no question.
Well, that's, okay. California's up there too, my state, but I'll give you Colorado's beautiful. Tell me, you have been out running around the country, talking to lots of people. How are people feeling right now? What are you hearing most about? What is on people's minds?
I do think that Democrats have a huge advantage heading into this midterm election. I think Trump is sort of universally loathed, both in the middle and on the left. And I think even a lot of Republicans here in Colorado are just sick of what's happening nationally. And what's happening nationally, I think actually generally people are sick of what's happening nationally. And by and large, Trump is getting blamed for that more than Democrats are getting blamed for that. But I do think it's something we need to watch out for, because people are on a very sort of anti-federal government kick, anti-incumbent kick. And if we don't actively work against that over the next few years, I think it could come back to bite us in the presidential one too.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I was thinking about your primary that just happened, right? You had, particularly at the gubernatorial level, right? You had Michael Bennet running against Phil Weiser, both, been in politics a long time, but that felt to me like a real anti-establishment, anti-Washington message. I'm wondering if that's how you read it on the ground there as well.
That's exactly how it came across to me. And, when Michael got in, the polling said that he was up by like 30. And over the course of the last year, I think it's a combination of factors, but I think it was in many ways driven by just an anti-Washington sentiment. And Phil did a very good job of aligning himself with, I am the one fighting Trump. I'm fighting Trump the hardest. And even though that's not really the job as the governor, Phil still managed to really make that. I think voters really wanted that to be front and center. And I think, Senator Bennet, Michael pushed that message a bit, but couldn't be as successful in sort of proving his bona fides at fighting Trump as I think someone like Phil could. And I think on top of that, the main attack against Phil from the Bennet team was that Phil only really started filing lawsuits against Trump after he announced he was running for governor, which still reinforces he's filing lawsuits against Trump, right? Like, don't repeat his strongest claim in your attack against him. So I think that a real anti-DC, anti-Trump sentiment, and then you also saw, and this may be a question, I'm just rolling through.
Please.
You also saw a real anti-Washington sentiment in Diana DeGette, Congresswoman for 30 years from Denver, losing to someone who has never held elected office. That was, I think, in many ways even more surprising than what happened in the governor's race here.
Yeah. Well, on that point, I think that sounds right to me, and that's how it felt from the outside. But I think that with Congressman DeGette, a lot was made of the ideology as well. That this was a left primary from the left, that this was an embrace of democratic socialism. But then that didn't totally square with your governor's race, which was really not about ideology. It didn't feel like as much as it was about establishment or not. So I'm kind of curious about your take on just like, how is that playing out in the Democratic primary? We're seeing, you and I were talking right after the Michigan election, which is obviously was a marquee race in this conversation nationally about the future of the Democratic Party. Do you think that that's on the minds of voters in Colorado? Like, is this really an embrace of the left or the center, or is this about something different?
I think it's fundamentally about a rejection of more of the same. And I go to that because if you look at it, John Hickenlooper was mayor of Denver. He was governor of Colorado. He ran for president, not very successfully, but and he came back and he's been a United States senator for 6 years. He was mayor of Denver. He lost Denver. He lost Denver against a candidate, Julie Gonzalez, who's a sitting state senator who ran in that DSA lane, and has. She jumped in January. She had no money that she could put on TV. Almost all of her money went to consultants, very little to actual communication. She had very little outstate presence. And John Hickenlooper won by about 5 points statewide and lost in the city and county of Denver. And so I think there is I think what we saw 10 years ago with when I was first running for the Colorado State House in my Democratic primary, talking to Democratic primary voters, people would say, I like Bernie Sanders. Trump's not bad. And I'd be like, you can't say those two things. They don't fit together. You can't like Bernie and Trump. They're opposites in so many ways, but what they have in common is they're saying the system is rigged. They're saying that the economy is not working for you, the government's not working for you, and people would rather vote for the stick of dynamite than more of the same. And I think that was true in the Hillary-Trump race. Hillary said, I'm going to make things work a little bit better for you. We're going to make it your life will be a little easier. And Trump promised the moon. Now, he got in and he actually made everything much worse. I think the same thing happened in the race with Harris, where she would say, if you vote for him, you're going to undermine democracy. And people said, well, democracy right now, I can't afford my rent, can't afford my groceries. Everything's more expensive. I'm not getting paid anymore. And if they have to choose, that is like democracy's poll numbers went down. That is demonstrably what happened during the course of that campaign. And Trump, even though everything he did just made things more expensive and worse, talked about the right things. He talked about the economy. He talked about your pocketbook. He talked about inflation. He talked about the things that were on people's minds. And if we don't really address the fundamental inequities in our economic system, I think we're lost. We have a K-shaped economy. That is what we're living in right now. I'm on the budget committee here in Colorado, chair, vice chair. I'm hopefully going to be treasurer. So I think a lot about the economy. In this K-shaped economy, we had a K-shaped recovery after COVID, and it has continued. There are a lot of folks out there, and actually the majority of folks that are not seeing an improvement in their everyday lives, that are spending more and more on credit, going further and further into debt to keep up a lifestyle that is just the same one they had last year. So things are getting more expensive. And if we don't turn around the cost of housing, if we don't turn around the cost of energy, utility bills over the last 5 to 10 years, the percentage of a person's income, it has gone up 50%. It went from something like 4% of the average income to something more like 6 to 7%. And we are just seeing huge increases in cost for folks. And folks at the top of the economy are fine. They're spending like crazy, and they are why we're not in a recession. It's crazy. You look at all the data, and we really should be in a recession right now. But we're not. It's being held together by that K-shaped economy, by the top 30% of earners. Never mind that the top 1% of earners are making so much more, top 0.1% of earners are making so much more than everybody else. We want folks to be able to work hard and earn a good life and get ahead, and everyone should be able to do that. The problem is that most of America right now doesn't think that's possible.
No, I agree with that. And I've seen some numbers recently. In fact, I think that was this morning that talked about your point about how people are feeling and unsatisfied, a little hopeless. It's even worse if you're like under 30. So it's actually
Oh yeah.
it's getting worse the younger you get. So that, which I think is really, I mean, I'm a mom of two college students, so like I where are the jobs going to be? And there's a lot of frustration. I completely hear that. Can you tie what you just said back to what you started with, which is like we better heed this warning as Democrats, because to me it feels like this is, I think, a challenge, particularly for people who believe in getting stuff done and focusing on results, but also need to marry that with the urgency of the moment and the anger that is out there. Because I feel like, I think you're right. People have voted for Trump because he said the right things. Know that he's done, not only is he like not done anything, he's made demonstrably everything worse, from the tariffs to the war to everything else. So, gas prices, everything else that we know about. Not to mention healthcare and other things. So I kind of feel like it's like a pox on both your houses right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
so and how do we as Democrats get around that to actually showing people that we can deliver, and not just focused on yelling, because we've got to do that too, but we also have to show that we can do something.
Like delivering, I think would be the first and most important part of actually delivering, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like you look at
Don't be crazy.
it.
No.
I mean, it is crazy.
Yeah.
Does anyone right now think the federal government is capable of delivering anything, even the smallest thing for the American people, right? When like one of the most popular things that the federal government could do is fix the daylight savings time insanity. They can't even do that, right?
I
Like,
know.
come on, fix
I know.
stupid things that everyone agrees on. Just do it. Just do anything. It is so frustrating to look at folks like, I'm going to say it, Chuck Schumer has got to go. Go, go, go. The biggest problem that we as Democrats have had over the last decade is people not leaving when they should. RBG should have left. Chuck Schumer should have got the vote before we lost control, right? That's a huge fail, and he should have been held accountable and shouldn't have been leader starting at that moment. But here he is. Nancy Pelosi, I think, held a bit too long, but at least she walked away and turned the reins over. And like, this is what people do. And to not let us have a primary where we get to actually think about who it is we want, see the different options, and just to hold on, like the irresponsibility of the folks in the Biden administration to let that happen to America. We have to actually deliver. We have to actually win. And frankly, we need a new generation of leadership in Washington.
So you've been in the legislature.
Really unpopular with some of the folks who listen to this podcast.
Well, I mean, hey, I
appreciate
the
candor. Go, guys. You gotta go. So many of these folks just gotta go.
Yeah, and look, the generational change thing is real, and I think that a lot of people are feeling it. And you're, again, I appreciate your candor. I think that
you're gonna love this stat.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton, George Bush, Donald Trump, all born in the same summer of the same year.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's crazy, actually.
In the Oval Office, the same summer. This is move on, guys.
Yeah,
move on.
Well, I mean, look, I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm like, I'm this generation that's getting skipped, right? We're going straight from baby boomers to millennials. So I totally feel this. I'm like, what happened to my whole generation getting to step up and lead? So I agree with that. On the delivering piece, you've been in the legislature. You were talking about the budget committee work that you've done for the last few years. Have you been able to find ways to deliver at the state level that then you can talk about as Democrats in Colorado that we can point to and say, this is what we mean by that, and what kinds of things are resonating with people?
Yeah, I love working at the state level for a couple of reasons. One, we actually accomplish things and we actually move the ball forward for the people of the state. And two, our Republicans are so much saner and so much more willing to work across the aisle than folks nationally. So not only do we sort of buck the national trends by actually accomplishing things, 90% of the bills we pass are bipartisan, 2/3 are broadly bipartisan, with a majority of folks on both sides supporting the measures. So we actually have a functioning democracy here in the state of Colorado. We fight about things for sure, but by and large, we identify problems, we solve them together, and create solutions that actually folks here see the benefit of. And so part of, I think you were asking about, what is it that I saw in the primaries, and sort of what is the case that was made by folks who were successful. I think a big part of why I won my primary when I did at the state assembly level is because I concentrated so ruthlessly on exactly the things that I had accomplished for folks, the challenges that we currently face, and exactly how I was going to use the Office of Treasurer to address them. I created the first and only in the country statewide middle income housing authority, the first and only in the country middle income housing tax credit. We created the most progressive paid sick leave policy in the country, and we did it with bipartisan support. Right? I pointed directly to things that people have felt in their everyday lives that we've been able to accomplish. I said, but housing's too expensive. We need to do more to invest more in housing. And as treasurer, I'm going to move dollars from Wall Street and into Colorado. We're going to take investments in Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and build homes here in the state. We're going to invest in businesses, invest that are creating Colorado jobs, invest in housing that nurses, teachers, and firefighters can afford. We're not going to buy as much from the Washington Treasury, the T-bills that we have. We're going to invest in bonds for local projects here in the state. And we are invested in local projects all across the country, and we should be investing dollars in the state and really concentrating on, this is the change I'm going to make. This is how you will benefit, right? Acknowledge the challenges. We have to talk about the challenges that people are facing. We have to connect with voters on that first before they are ready to listen to the solutions we have. So acknowledge their pain. Address, talk about specifically the ways that you're going to address the pain they feel. And like, just focus on the people that you're trying to serve, and not on the position you're trying to get. I think that's been true forever.
I think that makes total sense, of course. And when you're talking to people, literally, like, is this what they're saying to you, or are they caught up in the whatever the de jure of the Washington is, or are they like, hey, I need to talk to you about my gas prices. I need to talk to you about grocery prices. Like, it feels like that's what people outside Washington are talking about. But I feel like that there's just this big mismatch between what we're seeing online, what we're seeing in the national media, and what I think people hear every day when they're just like out at the grocery store, when maybe you're out talking to people either in your, legislatively or on the campaign trail. So like, is that disconnect real for you?
It's the economy, stupid. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that remains true to this day. I went to DC after the last election when Trump won, pretty close to that. And the buzz was like, oh, the groups. We listened to the groups too much. If only we hadn't listened to the groups. You know what no one in America was talking about? The groups. And maybe that's code for, we focused on social issues too much. We should have done the economy. Like, sure. But even that lesson gets refracted in the DC space as the groups. Like, that is just so far out of touch with the challenges that people across this country are feeling every single day. They can't afford rent. They can't afford their groceries. They can't afford the utility bills. They haven't seen real wage growth in decades. Like, we have real fundamental economic challenges here in this country. And if we as Democrats don't do more to actually address those challenges, we're going to pay for it at the ballot box, because it's not like people like us. They don't like Republicans right now, but they don't like us. We're just the only alternative. And I think you see that in a lot of these primary results. They don't like Democrats. And these DSA folks are something new, something different. They're the stick of dynamite. They're the Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump. I like them both sort of candidates. And so if mainstream folks don't find ways to actually address the challenges that people in this country face, you're going to see a lot more people on both sides getting elected. I think this is really demonstrably true, I think, in the Republican primary here in the state of Colorado. I think a lot of what's driving the election of folks that represent sort of the DSA ideology is also what's driving the election of folks like Victor Marx, who has made national news, right? Like, John Oliver talked about this guy. He's not well. Genuinely, he claims that his father had him kill a man when he was 8. And when asked how many people he's killed as an adult, he said, does that really matter? He claims to have called in an airstrike on Al-Qaeda as a citizen, as just like a person. Maybe it was ISIS. I don't know. Either way, it's clearly not true. And he won a Republican primary against Barb Kirkmeyer, who was on the budget committee, who has been in county government, who has been in the cabinet of the governor's office, is one of the most qualified human beings, full stop, to run for governor in the state of Colorado. And this guy won against her. It is, I think that what is driving, and his whole campaign is, I don't know anything about government, vote for me. But what is driving, I think, folks on both the left and the right to vote for these kinds of candidates is that we have not been delivering as a government. They don't see the change in their lives. They just see things getting harder. We've got to do better.
Listen, I totally agree with you 103,000%. I think the challenge is that we have seen what happened with the I'm going to burn it down. I got the appeal. I mean, I have this, I have fights with some of my friends who are like, anybody who voted for Donald Trump is a terrible person. Like, people were mad. They wanted to blow things up. I kind of get it. Like, I don't really have that same feeling about it, to be honest with you. The second time around might be a different story, but the first time around, I totally get. But regardless, so we've seen this movie though, and this movie did not result in what people hoped it would. In fact, it was worse than where we were. So I'm not saying we should go back to the status quo. We certainly can't talk about going backwards. It needs to be different. But how do you, in this environment where everybody wants to keep talking about blowing things up and, burn both houses down, all the houses down, like, how do you both craft a message politically and then actually try to govern in that environment? Like, this is a very, because my thing is, I don't think whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's the DSA, the solutions they're proposing are not good for the country. That's the problem. And so, like, how do you square that circle when, matching the mood with what we think needs to happen to actually deliver for people? So we actually bring down prices. We actually make people's lives better.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy things like, instead of having a special tax rate for capital gains, taxing it like income, because why is it that if you don't work and you make money from the money you already had, you pay lower taxes than if you were working and earning that money, right? And like that is like not a crazy idea. That should be mainstream Democratic policy, and we should be able to pass it at the federal level, or at least we should be talking about it. Returning to the insane tax rates that were effective under Ronald Reagan might be one way forward on this too, right? I have sympathy for folks that want to blow it up because they don't see the government working hard enough for them. But I also think these folks don't travel, right? A dysfunctional government, it doesn't turn out well, and democracy doesn't peacefully slide into some sort of libertarian paradise, right? Like, that's not the end game when things go badly, and so I think there's a real danger here that we need to be fighting against, protecting against. And the way we fight against it and protect against it is by actually winning and delivering for folks across the country. I think there are some clear policy wins. And I think that most of what it is that we talk about at the New Deal, if we could just actually pass these policies, we just do it, right? Unfortunately, it seems like the episode of The West Wing where Josh is talking with this political strategist, and like Josh is supposed to be the smartest guy on the show, and he's like, well, we won on this tobacco fight, and the political guy for the campaign is like, I didn't want to win the tobacco fight, I wanted to run on the tobacco fight. And it seems like Washington took the wrong lesson from that. That losing in Washington somehow helps you win on the campaign trail. And I will admit that campaigns are not entirely based on the success that you have had as in your governing. But I think that we've gone too far. Immigration should be a thing that we can fix in a bipartisan way. And we should have done it 30 years ago. We should have fixed it. And it is just insane to me that we can't move forward on so many issues like that. I look around at the dysfunction in government, and I think if we do get back some kind of control, we have to talk about what we want to do. We have to make it really clear what our plans are. And then when we win, we have to do it, because we had a couple of years where we won and we had control and we could have done a lot of things. And there are some really great things we did. The impact didn't turn around quickly enough. And we didn't talk about it enough too. I think that's another lesson we should learn, is that good work doesn't speak for itself. Yeah. This is a misconception, I think, especially we as Democrats have, Good work doesn't speak for itself. We have to tell folks what we've accomplished for them. We have to share what it is that we are doing, the bills that we have passed to improve their lives, because most people don't pay attention to politics like everyone who is listening to this right now. We are unique humans.
We are unique humans. Let's use unique. That sounds like a nice word. There's probably other words we could say. But the other thing I would add to what you're saying, I completely agree with you. But I also think that sometimes as Democrats who believe in the government can do good things, you kind of alluded to it earlier, we speak in government speak. So even when we're talking about, the good things we do, I feel like Democrats fall back on, we spent this much money. We passed this many bills. It's like all on inputs, not on outcomes. And I kind of feel like we've just got to I check myself sometimes. I talk all the time about, wanting to make government work better. Nobody cares about government. That is a means to making people's lives better. So even though that may be what I work on all day long is trying to make government work better, the way I need to talk about that is why that's going to improve people's lives. And I think that Democrats kind of sometimes shorthand things into this government speak that reinforces this idea that we care about is government. We don't care about people. And I think that that's a real problem,
Completely and totally agree. It's not we spent this much money on infrastructure. It's that we built this road. We reduced the price of this drug. We made it so, even going back to Obamacare, selling Obamacare, we made it so that your kid with asthma can still get health care coverage, and they can't hold that against them. We don't talk about our accomplishments in ways, first of all, we don't talk about our accomplishments, but then when we do, we don't talk about them in ways that connect with people's real lived experience in the world. And man, I wish we were better at that. I as a comms director, I was comms director on a couple of congressional races, a couple of governor's races. I always considered my job to tell the truth better than the other guy lied. I mean, it's easy to make the insanity that Trump and his team come up with really attractive and interesting and dynamic because they're making it up. They're storytelling.
Because there's no guardrails on reality.
There's no reality. We have to be able to storytell as well as they do, but with reality, with the facts. We need to be able, we can't drop to their level and start making things up. I also think we're just not good at it, right? It's not who we are. But we need to figure out how to tell our story in a way that is just as compelling, just as beautiful, just as attractive to the American people as they've made their story. And they run on fear, and that is not, I think, where we as Democrats need to live. But I think that you're seeing in some primaries that approach is having some success. And so that's not where I am. That's not what I believe in doing. I'm an optimistic guy. Fundamentally, it's just my nature. And so I'm running on hope and optimism and that hopey changey thing. But we need to do a better job. We need a better job telling our story, accomplishing things, and then telling folks about it in a way that moves them.
What about where to tell it? Going to where people are.
Yeah.
You do a lot of interesting things on this front. So we tend to talk to each other, I feel like.
We do a lot of talking to each other. And we're also convinced that it's, the 6 weeks before Election Day that is the most important time to get on TV and tell our story. I think more and more you're seeing that the way that people think about candidates is something that develops over years. And it's sort of in the air, and people have a brand a lot earlier than when their TV ads start going up on TV. You need to be consistent. You need to be available. You need to be out there telling the story all the time, not just in the short period of time before Election Day. I think it's also a place where we're falling short. The data analytics that the other side has, in some ways, it feels like they've discovered the printing press, and our response is hiring more scribes. It's like this. We're not fighting the same fight here, right? Like we don't have the same tools that they do. We aren't taking advantage of the different ways that people communicate these days nearly as effectively as the other side is, which is ironic, given that, as Democrats, we're supposed to control the media and the press. And apparently we just lost that part on the new media. And so I think we need to work hard to bring that up. And that doesn't mean we go on the Joe Rogan show, although I don't think we avoid, hard shows where the folks in charge the folks running the show don't agree with us. I go on KOA AM radio here in Colorado, which is a right-wing radio station. Go on every time I can, every time they invite me, because we need to tell that story. I think Mayor Pete does a great job of that.
with this. Just
Going
go
right
where
in
they'll
there.
have you and talk to people that wouldn't hear you otherwise. They're not listening to the other places. So if no one hears you, they're only going to hear what the other side says about you, and you have no way to counteract that. I mean, I'm going to ask you one other question.
I did leave X because it felt like pouring my vial of pure water into, the ocean of disgustingness wasn't changing the ocean. It was just increasing its volume. And so I did leave Twitter for that reason.
Yeah, I have not, but I hear you on that, and I think it's important to also recognize that the conversations that are happening there are not what real people are talking about. Like that is not the electorate. I want to say one other thing on this, and then I'll finish with the last question. But just on this general theme we're on right now, because I think anybody listening to this can already tell, or watching this can tell about you. You are incredibly authentic, and that is a word I've heard a lot during these conversations, right? I mean, you're candid, you're authentic, but when I've been asking New Deal leaders around the country to tell me what you think we need to do, tell me what you're hearing, authenticity comes up a lot, which is also, it's kind of part and parcel about what you're saying. We've got to deliver, but we also have to just be ourselves and tell truth, because if we're not that, then people, it reinforces this, you're not here for me, you're doing something I don't understand. I think that, and so I don't know if you think about that or if that's just who you are, but do you have anything to say about the candidates that you've seen to be successful? Doesn't mean you have to be like someone else. You just have to be like you, right?
Yeah. I have a master's degree in divinity, and I joke that I went to divinity school as penance for all the years I worked on campaigns, but it's only kind of a joke. There are ways to do campaigns that are bad for the soul. There are ways to do campaigns that instrumentalize voters. When we knock doors, we listen to the stories that people tell, and we send notes back acknowledging those stories. If you show up to a door and you read a script and you ask for an ID, and then if they're like, I don't know, why are you here? You just read another script. That is dehumanizing for the person who is doing that door knocking, and it's instrumentalizing the person you're talking to. Those are real people at the door. We need to change the way that we campaign. And frankly, I think, as a national party, right, as a political party, there is too much that is done on campaigns that is aimed at winning the campaign. I think doing the right thing on the campaign, treating voters like people, engaging, listening, that is how you win. I think you look at what happened in Michigan, and from everything I've seen, the guy who won was the much more accessible candidate, had far more public events, and not to say that his opponent wasn't a personable and good one-on-one, but he seemed to really make an effort to be available in public and open and transparent, and genuine, and even in the things that I perhaps wish he was not genuine in.
Right,
so
right.
I think there's ways to run elections that are bad for democracy. I frankly think that Harris's campaign was bad for democracy. The way that whole thing played out was a detriment that undermined something that is already in a fragile state right now. We got to be rebuilding, and we got to run races where even if we lose, we've done something good for America, right? That's how we need to be thinking about campaigns. It's how I think about them. It's where we spend the most money communicating with folks, although I think we should shift it. I think we ought to be communicating with folks intentionally and in a paid way, for, in between elections as well.
Yeah.
But it is when we spend the most money. And if we're spending all this money, people know if you're treating them well, if you respect them and you care about them, not simply for the number that shows up on election day after your name, right? But you care about them because of their name, right? They have a name. You care about them as human beings and people. They know, they can smell it. And it's the right thing to do, and it's the winning thing to do.
I totally agree with you. And I think I'll just add on to what you're saying. I feel like the other idea is that, you make all these promises that are easy to make on the campaign trail, and then you can't deliver them. It just feeds the cycle that we were talking about earlier, right? Or you just demonize the opponent and the opponent demonizes you. You're just reinforcing that, they all suck. So it's like, I know it's like, we can have a whole nother conversation, which I would love to have on how if we go high, they go low, or we go low, they got whatever that is, because I think it is kind of an interesting thing. But at the same time, we are collectively engendering the cycle over and over and over again, because we have to think about I think what I heard you say, which I completely agree, the long-term impacts on our politics is wrapped up in how we campaign. And so, and how we govern both. And so I think that that's a really interesting thread.
And I don't think
we could spend more time
to do this. I think that you see folks on both sides of the aisle instrumentalizing the folks whose votes they're trying to earn.
That's not a partisan sentence. That is just our politics sentence about how we're all doing politics. Yeah.
Yeah. Part of why I wanted Barb Kirkmeyer to win the governor's race, because I thought Barb Kirkmeyer, with her seriousness and her ideas and her respect for the people of Colorado, would have a contest of ideas with our guy. And it would have made, I still think that the Democrat would have won, but it would have sharpened them. It would have made them better. It would have shown the people of Colorado that there is a debate to be had, in a real contest of ideas. And instead, it's a guy who refers debate questions to his dog.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we got to go back to having character be at least one of the things we consider for campaigns. I mean, that's, again, a different conversation. Let me ask this last question, a fill in the blank question I've been asking everybody. So we've talked a lot in general. We've talked a little bit about the 26 race. We're going to head into 28, all things. So we won't talk about specific people, but I want you to answer the question: if Democrats kind of long-term want to win my state, want to win Colorado, they need to blank.
Make housing affordable. They need to focus on the economy. It's the economy, stupid. Like it's healthcare costs, right? I haven't mentioned healthcare in this call. That's a mistake. Probably because I just came from a 5-hour hearing on Medicaid and how we are just in such dire straits in the state. Being on the budget committee last year, we had to make cuts that were just heartbreaking to make, but we don't really have any other options. I think healthcare in America is getting totally out of control. It's not just Medicaid, where the costs are rising way faster than our ability to keep up. It's healthcare. And we have got to do something about the cost of healthcare. We've got to do something about the cost of housing, the cost of living broadly. If you want to win anywhere in America, right? Colorado is not unique in this. Things are expensive. Let's help make them not expensive again. It's not rocket surgery.
I think you mixed metaphors there, but I like it. Rocket science, rocket surgery.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's funnier. Rocket surgery is funnier.
Is that a real thing? Okay, no.
No. I don't know. Ask NASA.
I think you're right about that. I think you're right about the affordability. Well, thank you, Senator, so much for being with me, for your thoughts, and congratulations on your win for the treasurer race. We will be watching that with bated breath, and just thanks for the advice, great advice you gave us across the country on kind of how to think about all these things. So really appreciate your time. Well, thank you. I don't know how actionable it is, but I hope it was helpful, at least entertaining. It was both entertaining and helpful, I promise you. We'll talk soon. All right, take care.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. And because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars were used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.